Hey, what's going on everyone? Welcome back to the Bimmer Barn. Today we're going to be working on the 335i Wagon project, and specifically we have to move the 335i motor into place in front of the wagon, and then we need to change out the entire engine harness to one that is going to be compatible with our wagon. And then we're going to do some preventative maintenance and replace some of the seals and gaskets that we know are leaking, so that we don't have to do them when they're in the car and it's a little bit harder to do. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you do, be sure to leave a like down below. Without further ado, let's get straight to work. Alright, so it's in. The N54 drivetrain with the all-wheel drive front end is installed in this rear-wheel drive E90, and it's a tight fit, especially for the transmission, but I was able to manage to get a couple of bolts to hold that thing up in place, so I think we'll have enough clearance to put this car on wheels and roll it onto a trailer when we need to recycle the whole car. The engine fits in great, and now we can move on to the wagon and focus on getting that motor into the car. Now there's something that you should know about engine swapping in E90 chassis, because the chassis harness on this car changed 3 times, I believe, and that's with respect to the junction box and how it connects up to the engine. Now we'll see that on this car right here, the E90, it's a 2008, and you'll see that these connectors, they have 4 big plugs and then a lot of smaller pins. Same thing for this black connector, 4 big pins, a lot of smaller ones, and this one as well. Now, when we go over to my 2006 car, we'll see that we have almost similar colors, but very different connectors here. So these are 8-pin connectors. You see another 8-pin there, and then another 8-pin white connector here, and then this red power wire, which just doesn't line up to the harness for the N54. So after doing some research and finding that these chassis have different harnesses, I thought that I was gonna have to repin this harness right here, which would be a ton of work, honestly, considering that the junction box is different. It would basically require taking the junction box out of here, swapping it over, a ton of work. But someone made the recommendation that I could just backdate the engine harness, and that way it should be plug and play with this car. So all I had to do was find a 2006 engine harness to go to my 2006 chassis, and that's what I have right here in this box. So let's go ahead and unbox this and then take a look and compare it, and hopefully we'll be able to install this to the motor and connect it straight up to the car. So here are the 2 harnesses that we have. This one is the main engine harness. You can see goes to the oxygen sensors in the rear. We have the junction box that goes underneath the intake manifold, and it goes up to the main connector that goes into the DME here. And then this is the automatic transmission harness. So you'll see that it has the connector for the transmission, and then it has all those connectors that are 8-pin, just like the ones that match our chassis harness, and everything should just bolt directly up into the car and communicate perfectly. It looks like we might have to steal one of the relays from this side, but otherwise I think that this harness is good to go. We'll go ahead and start removing the one off of the motor, and then we need to correctly install this one, make sure that we don't get anything mixed up, and then it'll be ready to connect up into the car. Of course, we're not going to be installing the motor today, but we're going to be servicing some other things while the motor is out. So let's go ahead and start pulling this harness off. So now we're going to be changing the vacuum pump seal because I was convinced that this thing is leaking just based off of some of the oil buildup on the side of the motor here. And once we get this thing off, we will see just how much oil was leaking from it. To remove this high pressure pump, you need to loosen the 17mm nuts that hold the high pressure lines on, and then the 3 5mm hex bolts that hold the pump on itself, and then it'll come free. So now we're going to be replacing the drive belt pulleys and main tensioner. I noticed that some of the pulleys on this motor were worn and they're making noise. So preventatively, I wanted to replace all of them, including the tensioner as well as the belt, because the last thing that you want to happen on this particular motor is for the belt to fall off of one of the pulleys and then get shredded up and sucked into the front main seal, which could cause catastrophic damage to your motor if those bits of rubber are sucked into the oil pump and into the oil and all that. So we're going to replace all these things preventatively, and that way we don't have to have this issue in the future. And here I'm just kind of playing with the front turbo for bank 1. I just wanted to see if there was any damage to it, any signs of wear. There is a little bit of dust, grease buildup on the turbo fans here, but I don't think that it's anything to worry about. You guys let me know in the comments below. It does spin pretty good though, that's for sure. Next up, we're going to be replacing the oil filter stand gasket as well as the oil cooler gasket, which are both in like the same place. We're going to get this thermostat hose out of the way here so that we have better access to the lower bolt that holds this thing on. And then once we've got it off, we're going to clean it up real good and replace the gaskets. Next up, we're going to be replacing the oil cooler gasket. This is on the front side of the oil filter stand that we were working on a second ago, and you just have 3 bolts to remove it. If these are leaking, they typically put some black tar, grease, oil on the front of the motor right where you can see here, and we're going to be replacing mine because I knew that it was leaking before and we don't want to have that issue in the future. So just a quick gasket change and we are going to be all good to go. Now, some of you guys might remember this mod from a previous video. I'll go ahead and put a link to it up in the corner up here. But this is a great mod to do to your cooling system on the N54 because the Mickey Mouse hose, as I call it here, it's made out of plastic and it goes straight into the front of the motor here. And because that plastic gets heat cycled so much, it gets really brittle and tends to fall apart. So we're going to be preventatively replacing this fitting here. Although it looks good and it actually looks like a brand new hose, we're going to cut the ring off that holds this clamp on and then removing that connector and replacing it with the one by Rain. It's made out of metal. It's never going to fall apart, and you're going to be sure that this is never going to cause you a coolant leak in the future. So with all of that service done, I'd say we knocked out about half of the things that I had bought for this motor, and it's almost ready to put in the car now. Doing the oil filter stand gaskets was key. The preventative maintenance on that cooling hose was good. I definitely think that we had an oil leak from the high pressure fuel pump, so we're going to keep an eye on that. And since everything on this motor is clean, if we do come up with any leaks, we will definitely know where they're coming from. I think the only things left are kind of like some finishing points. I have to change the lower hose for the cooling system here. Also the belt, I can't get it out until the engine is installed. So there's some service that we need to wait until the engine is in the car to be able to do some of that stuff, just like the transmission service as well, the fluid and filters there. So we are getting really close to getting in the car, and in a few episodes, soon enough, we will be starting this thing up and making it run. So that's going to conclude our video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed watching us get the engine ready to install into the 335, and doing all these preventative service procedures is a vital part of making sure that this build is 100% good to go the first time that we start it up. So we have a ton more things coming to this build, bushings and stuff like that, ton of aftermarket mods, and soon enough we'll get into tuning as well. But for now, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Be sure to leave a like down below or a comment if you have any questions, and subscribe to the channel if you're new and you haven't yet. As always, I hope everyone has an awesome day, and we'll see you next time.